I have a client I work with. She's 31 years old, she's 5'3", and she weighs 240 pounds. She is a very intelligent person, she's a joy to be around, and she is beautiful. She is also, at the gym that I work out, almost always one of the strongest and most energetic people in any class that I've ever been in with her. And if you look at her blood work and you look at her vitals, she is healthy. Very healthy, healthier than a lot of other people I work with who are her same age but are not overweight. But she is overweight and she wants to lose weight. She needs to lose weight because as she gets older, she probably isn't going to be as healthy. So about a month ago, she and I were talking about her emotional struggles with weight loss, and she said a lot of really interesting things to me, things I had never thought of before. But she also told me that one of her biggest struggles with losing weight was that she did not recognize the sensation of hunger. She didn't really know what it felt like to be hungry. And this was a major obstacle for her in her weight loss journey. So as I thought about that, I was thinking that hunger is really shunned in our society. We are taught to fear hunger. Hunger is a bad thing. But is it really such a bad thing? That when you fast, you come to terms with this question. If you think about in our society, we are inundated with food everywhere. Everywhere you turn, you are going to be faced with food. Every event that you go to, on every TV show that you watch, they're eating, all signs everywhere, restaurants everywhere. If your kids go to school when they're little, they're given a snack and then lunch and then a snack. I mean, how much can people actually eat? We are taught to eat three small meals and 3 small snacks every day to lose weight, which is ridiculous. So if you are thinking about fasting, this is something that I really recommend that you consider before you start. What is your relationship with hunger? Are you fearful of hunger? And if you are, that's okay. That's part of the process. But first, you have to really think about this. I resisted hunger when I first started intermittent fasting. I was thinking that I was gonna probably, fall down and not be able to do anything if I went more than 11 or 12 hours without eating. Well, that hasn't been the case. As a matter of fact, the opposite has occurred. I have a better relationship with food. I'm more mindful of the eating process, and you can too. And this is one of the great benefits of fasting, which I'm going to talk about. So in this video, I'm going to go through the slides that I presented at a talk called The Power of Fasting. And so this is really just created for anybody who couldn't attend the talk or is interested in fasting. It's about 20-25 minutes. I'm going to go through the slides, and I hope that you learn a lot. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want to work with me to do some fasting or any kind of dietary interventions, please feel free to reach out to me. I have a Master of Science degree in human nutrition. I'm a certified nutrition specialist. I work at Hudson Valley Functional Medicine in Valley Cottage, New York, and I also work at a fantastic gym called Nyack Fitness in Nyack, New York. I am a nutritionist, and therefore I work with a broad range of conditions. And that means that I need a big toolbox filled with all sorts of tools. Fasting is a very powerful tool, but it's not the only tool. And I'm not here to tell you that you should fast and fasting is going to solve all your problems. I'm here to present the idea, the benefits of fasting, things you need to be careful about with fasting, and to see if it's something, maybe a tool that would work for you. So I'm not definitely advocating just this one thing. I definitely use a wide range of tools to work with people. So check out the video and let me know what you think. Leave a comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please reach out to me with any questions. Fasting is an ancient practice. It goes way back. This is a quote by Plutarch, who is an ancient Greek writer and historian, and he said, "Instead of using medicine, better fast today." If you think about fasting and hear about fasting online, you're definitely going to hear people talking about hunter-gatherers. Yes, there is evidence that hunter-gatherers did fast. In other words, they had, usually when they were on a hunt, they would go 4 or 5 or more days without food, and so they had to fast. I'm sure they didn't choose to do this, but they were able to. And then as we moved into agrarian, agricultural societies and we were farming, we were getting our food from the crops. And so sometimes those crops didn't work out. And therefore there was famine, and there may have been, there were definitely food shortages that happened. So throughout our history, human history, we have had to go without food for shorter or longer periods of times. And we've survived to talk about it today. So we do know that our bodies can fast. And going back to ancient Greece, not only Plutarch, but also Hippocrates, Plato, and Aristotle all advocated for fasting for your health. Fasting is the greatest remedy, the physician within. This is a quote by Philip Paracelsus, who was known as one of the 3 founding fathers of modern Western medicine. He also was an advocate for fasting and for medical doctors, physicians to look to nature for guidance about healing. Benjamin Franklin was also an advocate for fasting. He said, "The best of all medicines is resting and fasting." Can you imagine what Benjamin Franklin would think if he was alive today, where nobody rests and hardly anybody ever fasts? So not only do we want to take it easy and rest more and relax more, which we probably hardly anybody gets enough of, but also to eat less. Fasting is used in many spiritual and religious practices. We see even to this day that it's used in Hinduism, in Christianity, in Buddhism, in Judaism, in Islam, in the Baha'i faith. And fasting is not used to torture people or make people suffer. It's used to help to bring people closer to God. And many people who do not have a specific religion also use fasting to raise their consciousness and their awareness and to connect with the spiritual world. Anybody who has done any kind of fasting, even short-term fasting, may have an inkling of how this is actually a very powerful practice. And it does raise your awareness, this feeling of hunger. In the Old Testament, fasting was said to be a powerful prayer that allowed the prophet to be open to divine revelation. Every disease that afflicts mankind develops from, more or less, habitual eating in excess of the supply of gastric juices. This is a quote by Dr. E.H. Dewey, who was a medical doctor, in his book, The True Science of Living, which was published in 1885. Dr. Dewey also wrote another book in 1900 called The No Breakfast Plan and the Fasting Cure. He was an advocate for fasting. During this period of time, from the mid-1800s up into the late 1900s, there are documented case study reports of using fasting for therapeutic healing purposes. It was used to heal cancer, it was used to help people with seizures and obesity and for overall health. And there are, if you look in the literature, there are multiple case studies on this. So there was definitely a lot of interest during this period of time in the healing power of fasting. Most of these fasts were 30 to 45 day fasts. They were prolonged fasts. Some of them even went over 100 days. To this date, the longest documented fast, I'm sure there have been other ones, but this one was actually documented in 1973 as a case study. A 27-year-old obese man fasted for 382 days, which is over a year he did not eat. And he lost 276 pounds and suffered no long-term consequences from the fast. So what is fasting, you may ask? According to Dr. Jason Fung, who is an endocrinologist who uses fasting in his practice to help people with type 2 diabetes, fasting is not something you do, it's something you don't do, which is very different from most of the recommendations that I make, and the doctor I work with, we make. We want people to do things, eat better oils, eat more vegetables. Fasting is where you just don't do anything. don't eat. There are many different approaches to fasting. There's the 13-hour nightly fast, which is a basic human requirement. We've believed that you sleep 8 hours a night and you just don't eat for 12 or 13 hours a night. And up until the 1950s and 60s, this was common practice. People believed that snacking made you fat. So when you were done with dinner, you were done eating. This is a great, we want to bring this back because currently we're told to eat and then snack and then eat and then snack. How about taking a break from eating for a little while? 12 or 13 hours. You eat your dinner, you relax, you go to bed, you're sleeping most of the time, and then maybe you have a late breakfast and you haven't gone that long without eating. And most people can do this safely and easily. That's also what we call time-restricted or intermittent fasting, where sometimes people will extend that 12 or 13-hour fast to a 16 or an 18 or even a 24-hour fast. Time-restricted feeding is anything under 24 hours. Prolonged fasting is where you're now going over 24 hours, 48 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 5 weeks. That's what prolonged fasting is. Prolonged fasting, anything over 24 hours, really should be done under medical supervision. I'm not telling you to go out and just start doing a 5-day fast all of a sudden. You need to work with a doctor or a medical practitioner who is familiar with fasting in order to do this. There are centers around our country where you can go and you can rest for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and fast, and they kind of take care of you. And so it's a fasting vacation. So if you're interested in this, maybe check that out, because obviously you're under medical supervision if you do it in one of these centers. Another type of fasting that's emerging now more and more is called, well, one name for it is the fasting mimicking diet. The fasting mimicking diet is a term that was created by Dr. Walter Longo. He has a book called The Longevity Diet. Dr. Longo is a longevity researcher, so he was very curious. How can we help people to live longer, and not only live longer, but live a healthier life longer? And so he looked at the research and he did his own research, and he was finding that caloric restriction and prolonged fasting made animals and organisms live longer. He was surprised when he first found this, because the idea was that you would starve these organisms or these animals, but the contrary happened. They lived longer. And so, being fascinated with this, he also was looking at human studies, and there is evidence of this happening in humans as well. However, Dr. Longo felt that long-term caloric restriction was very difficult for people, very uncomfortable, as he felt was prolonged fasting. So he created the fasting mimicking diet, where your stomach sees food, but your cells see fasting. And so you eat a very low calorie amount for 5 days, and you mimic fasting during this period of time. He has developed a kit called Prolon, where you really you get your food for the 5 days, and that's what you do. That's all you eat. And it provides many benefits that fasting would, and he did a study with 100 people, so this was a human study, and he saw that especially in people who had high blood sugar, their blood sugar was going down. People who had a lot of inflammation, the inflammation was decreasing. And people who had a high risk for cancer, their cancer markers were getting better. And healthy people saw these results as well, but the people who had more risk factors saw great benefits from doing this. So this is a therapeutic diet. It can be used by people who are healthy and normal weight, and they just want to increase their stem cell production and just, give their health a boost. And it can be used therapeutically for people who want to lose weight and people who have illnesses. So this is another approach to fasting that's out there. There's also the 5 and 2 diet, which is a different but similar type of thinking, where you eat normal amounts of food for 5 days a week, and then for 2 days a week you eat very low calories, 500 calories for women, 600 calories for men. And most people use this for weight loss. So these are the different approaches to fasting that are available to you. This is Thomas DeLauer. He is a YouTube sensation, and he coaches people, helps people lose weight. He himself used to be overweight. Now he's an advocate for intermittent fasting. As I mentioned, it's intermittent fasting, time-restricted feeding. Look at this guy. He is definitely not losing muscle mass. So one of the things that people worry about is, oh, I'm going to burn protein, I'm going to burn all my muscle mass. This is simply not true. Protein use actually is very steady throughout a fasting period, whether you're fasting for 1 day or 3 weeks. It's pretty steady, and you're not going, our muscles are not a source of fuel for our body very much. Mostly we are going to be burning fat when we're fasting. We're going to get into a state of ketosis. So why would the body start burning muscle? It just doesn't do that. Not in any significant way. And obviously this wonderful gentleman is able to be completely ripped and still be doing intermittent fasting. So check out his videos. He's got some great information. So you may be asking, why should I fast? I've mentioned some of the benefits, but really, what's the big deal? Think about it this way. Once we reach about 30 to 35 years old, it's time to stop growing. We're all grown up now. Now, physically that is. Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, we want you to continue growing until the day you die. But physically, accelerated growth and continued growth into the 30s, 40s, and 50s promotes aging, and it accelerates death. So in order to slow down this process, we're encouraging you to just simply eat less. Instead of going on some caloric restricted diet and making yourself miserable, we're saying do some intermittent fasting, maybe do some prolonged fasting here and there. And what that does is it allows the body to stop growing. Now, you may think growing sounds good, right? I want to grow. The type of growth that I'm talking about is within the cells. So as we get older, the number of damaged DNA, damaged cells that we have increases, and it continues to increase as we continue to eat a lot and fuel this growth. There are two constituents in our food that in particular fuel this type of not so good growth, and that's protein and sugar. Now, I'm not saying don't eat protein, don't eat sugar ever. What I'm saying is that these have been found to promote growth in the body, and with all of our cells that have these damaged DNA and these useless proteins that we don't need anymore, we're not giving our body a chance to clean all of that out. There's a process called autophagy, which allows your body to push out the old useless proteins and the damaged cells and get rid of them so that they are not going to continue to grow into perhaps tumors or cancerous growth. We do know that diseases of aging such as cancer and Alzheimer's are specifically fueled by excessive growth. So when you fast, you put the brakes on all of that, you give your body a rest, and your body can get rid of the old stuff and make room for the new. This is why we like fasting. Ultimately, this is the big win for fasting. Fasting is good for you. These are the benefits of the shorter fasts, such as the overnight 12 or 13-hour nightly fast or intermittent fasting. So a lot of people struggle with nighttime eating. In general, we do understand that this is not good for us. It's not good for your hormones, such as leptin, and a lot of times people don't sleep well if they've eaten at night. So when you know that you're going to do a 16-hour fast, and if you started at 7 p.m., you're going to be able to eat earlier the next day, it kind of promotes this habit of, whoa, okay, let me stop eating so that I don't have to go till 2 p.m. the next day fasting. So that's a good habit that it promotes. Also, when you fast, even just over the night, your insulin goes down. And that's a good thing. That allows your body to burn fat. If your insulin is high, you're never going to really get at that fat tissue. So this gives you an opportunity to reduce your insulin and allow you to burn fat. And fat is a great source of fuel. We have a ton of it, all of us. And so this also helps control your blood sugar and control cravings. Also, as I mentioned earlier, when you fast, you do tend to have more control over your eating for the rest of the day. And I'll go more into this in a little bit. Fasting, intermittent fasting, even the 12-hour fast can help you lose weight or lean up. I've seen this with people who struggled with nighttime eating. They stopped that, they did the 12-hour fast, and they were easily losing weight without doing all this crazy dieting. So it's fantastic for that. And you know what? It's easy to do. Like I mentioned before, you eat your dinner, you relax, you go to bed, you wake up, you eat your lunch, and maybe have some coffee or some green tea, and it's not that hard. This is pretty easy. Long-term fasting has deeper benefits for sure. So that process that I was talking about before called autophagy, where you clean out the old cells and useless proteins, this really starts to happen after a couple days of fasting. So this is great for long-term health, for preventing or slowing down the aging process. It's been shown that we increase our stem cell production when we go for these longer fasts, which has many health implications. In particular, it's been shown for autoimmune disease or immune function. Also, what happens is once you're in 2 days, 48 hours or more into fasting, you are in full ketosis. And the ketogenic diet is very popular these days. Everybody wants to get some ketones going, whether they're taking MCT oil, doing bulletproof coffee, or whatever. This is another way to get your body into extreme ketosis, not extreme in a bad sense, but much more of a solid state of ketosis than when a lot of people do the ketogenic diet. There's nothing wrong with the ketogenic diet. I love it, and it actually goes really well with fasting. But if you want to really do the ketosis state, you get it with fasting, and this increases your mental clarity and it increases your energy. So ironically, after you've been fasting for a couple days, you will feel more energy and more mental clarity, which is awesome. Plus, you save money, you save time, you save energy. This is always the case. If you avoid eating, you're going to spend less money on food and less time preparing things in the kitchen. So who doesn't want to save money and save time, right? Now, if you do the fasting mimicking diet, the Prolon therapy by Dr. Longo, you may not save as much money, but you will get those long-term fasting benefits, the longevity and the stem cell production and all of that. Fasting goes with any diet. It doesn't matter if you're eating a vegan diet, if you're eating a ketogenic diet, if you have to avoid gluten and dairy and eggs and soy and beans and all of these things, you can still fast. Any dietary restriction or diet plan goes with fasting. And the last, well, maybe it's not the last, but the last that I'm listing of the many benefits of fasting, and which I think is the most profound, is this. It helps you heal your relationship with food. And this is a big problem for a lot of people. It's a serious problem. What happens in our society is that as I mentioned earlier, we are obsessed with food. We're inundated with food images wherever we go. It's eat, 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 food, food, food. At the same time, we completely take food for granted. We're going to eat a ton, and then we know that in the morning there's going to be more food, and at lunch there's going to be more food. So we don't place really such a high value on food. When you fast and you just step back and you say, you know what? Thank you very much, food. I'm taking a break from you right now. It gives you a sense of power. You have control over this, and it's not in a distorted way that can happen with people who are doing calorie restriction for a long period of time, that can really get into people's heads and lead into anorexia and bulimia, and it can be very damaging. Fasting is a very different emotional, spiritual process where you are actually now in control, true control, not fake control, and you're abstaining from eating, and in the process you're developing a much more mindful, appreciative relationship with food. So when you haven't eaten for 16 hours or 3 days, your first meal, you're going to savor it and appreciate it. And what I do every time I break a fast is I make incredibly nourishing, nutritious, delicious meals that I sit down and I close my eyes and I enjoy 100%. I'm not looking at my computer or the TV or reading a magazine. I am with my food and with the eating process. And when you get this relationship with food, you'll never want to go back. It's very, very powerful, and it will help you with weight loss for as long as you need to take to lose weight or lean up or whatever your goals are. So there are, of course, some cautions about fasting. Definitely, I recommend that everybody eases into fasting. I don't want anybody to run out and do a 24-hour or 48-hour fast after watching a couple videos. Start with 12 hours or 13 hours a night, and if you're already doing that, great. Add another hour or two. Try a 14-hour fast. Just see how you do. There's no competition about who's going to be able to fast the longest. Work with your body. Pay attention to what's going on in your body. If you are feeling jittery or nervous or tired or irritable, eat something. Try again the next day. It's not a competition. You can work your way up. If you do plan to work out, do some intermittent fasting and exercise during a fast, that's fine. Just also pay attention to how you feel if you're at the gym and you've been fasting for 16 hours and you're feeling lightheaded and you're not able to do your normal lifting. Well, maybe you do need to eat a little bit before you work out. Some people work out fasting and they love it. Other people, it's a challenge. So just always, please, please, please pay attention to your body. Don't force any of this. This is for health purposes. This is not a competition. Also, it's so important that you stay hydrated while you're fasting. Think about it this way. 70% of the fluid, the water that you take in on any given day comes from food. So you're going to need to increase your water intake while you're fasting and throw some minerals, some electrolytes in that water, drink some green tea, drink some bone broth, have some mineral water, or just put those drops in your water so that you're taking in also minerals and electrolytes while you're fasting. Please, please, please do not use fasting as an excuse to overeat, to binge, or to eat unhealthy food. This is the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. What I'm promoting here and I'm encouraging you to do is to experiment with some fasting if you want, if it feels right to you, and heal or develop an even healthier relationship with food. This is not about what I see on Facebook. Oh, I only eat dinner, and then dinner is 4,000 calories of spare ribs and macaroni and cheese. This is not what I'm talking about. Break your fast with some high quality fats and protein and a lot of vegetables and fibers. Don't break it with macaroni and cheese. If you are pregnant or you're breastfeeding, you should not fast. Children should not fast. Anybody who's malnourished or underweight, so if you're less than 18% body fat, you really should not fast. If you're a normal weight, you can fast. Just be careful to not overdo it and get into a situation where you become underweight. Fasts, as I mentioned, fasts over 24 hours need to be done under medical supervision. And also, if you are on any medications, please consult with a medical doctor who understands fasting before you do any kind of fasting. In particular, if you're on insulin or any blood sugar lowering medications, you really need to be cautious about fasting because it can bring the blood sugar too low and create hypoglycemia. So please consult with your doctor before doing any kind of fasting. So that's my presentation on fasting, and I hope that it answered some of your questions or concerns about fasting and maybe even inspired you to do some fasting. Again, for me and the clients that I've worked with fasting, I've found to be the most powerful aspect of fasting is how it develops a healthy relationship with food.